A woman is distraught over her stolen tiny house. Oh boy, that's a bad afternoon when your tiny house gets stolen. You know, you walk down the little pathway to your little tiny mailbox, and then you turn around and your tiny house is gone. It's been snatched by a tiny crane and thrown on a tiny flat lift and some tiny truck and just trucked out of there. This is in St. Louis. I'm sorry. A woman who is building a tiny house in South St. Louis is hoping that police and the public can help after her home was stolen. She wasn't even done. They stole a half-built tiny house, it seems. Oh, man. She hadn't even finished putting her tiny chimney on the damn thing. It was gone. Oh, man. Megan Panu. Wow, we're getting some easy names today. Megan Panu got a call over the weekend asking her if she had moved her tiny house overnight. She had not moved her tiny house overnight. She called St. Louis City to see if her tiny home had been towed from where it was parked for the past month. It had not been towed. Panu's tiny home had been stolen, in fact. She told Fox News the possibility she may not get her tiny home back is, in fact, devastating to her person. Not to her person. I said that. I just thought I would embellish it. But she did say it was devastating, as it would be for me if my tiny house was stolen. Panu began building the tiny house as part of her senior thesis in environmental studies at Webster University. Oh, it's another college student getting jacked. Oh, man, it's hard being a college student these days. You gotta, go get food at a cafeteria several times a day. She began building the tiny home as part of her senior thesis in environmental studies. How is that a senior thesis? College is such a joke. It's such a joke. This is how you spend I'm building a tiny house. That's how I'm going to get my degree. I mean, it started as a trailer and a plan to live with less. She has been working on the tiny house for 2 years. She documented her journey on social media all along the way. What hard work it is. During the construction phase, she kept the trailer in a place called Ballwin, 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 hilarious name. And then she moved it to South City. Quote, we were working 8-hour days, several days out of the week, she said. So I would go from my classes at Webster and I would drive out to Baldwin and work on my tiny house. And I loved it. I love the hustle of that. You know, I just love the hustle of driving to work on my tiny house. She had plans to move the tiny house again this weekend to an intentional living community, which would showcase shipping container homes, earth bag homes. What are earth bag homes? Haven't heard of those. Need to research that. And other tiny home configurations. She intended to move into the tiny house in the spring. Pano estimates she invested $20,000 into her tiny home, $1,500 of it which she received from the public through a GoFundMe campaign. You dummies gave her money to build this tiny house? Stupid. But the money's not the part. It's the last. It'll be a cold day in hell when I give a college student money, I'll tell you right now. Jonesy, you're very anti-college student this afternoon. I am. But what about our loans that we got? Well, you're dumb. You're dumb for taking out those loans. I think the jury's out on the loan situation. I think we all know how dumb it is to go into $100,000 worth of debt. I'm carrying around $35,000 worth of debt myself, okay? I know the deal. All right, I'm not coming from a place of Jonesy doesn't understand the plight. I understand the plight. But I think we all you're stupid, okay? $100,000 education to go build a tiny home? I mean, come on. What kind of arrangement is that? Your parents should be fired. Can you fire parents? There's such little regard for the effort and the time and the love that I put into this tiny home, she says. I think that's what's the most frustrating to me. And it's not just a material possession. It's not just a car. It's a place where I was going to sort of, build roots and grow in my community and have tiny little children and tiny little pets, emotional support pets for my tiny home. Because when you live in a tiny home, you need emotional support from anywhere you can get it, which is why I was going to fill it with goldfish and little tiny crawfish. My emotional support crawfish. My emotional support hermit crab collection. Panu said that some unique features of her tiny home made it identifiable, including 2 large green windows. Why am I reading this? Why? It's like I find it funny and deserving that her tiny home was stolen. It's probably some homeless family is going to really use it not some college student who can just, you know, live with their parents for free. Oh, I hope I get hate mail and call-ins from college students telling me how insensitive I am to the plight of this poor college student that lost her tiny home. Go ahead, call in, tell me, yell at me. My number is 646-450-2012. I'm not hiding. And can we, for an instance, I'd like to actually revisit my only tiny home experience. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. I spent the night in a tiny home in the desert of Joshua Tree a few weeks ago, and I had the greatest time. And I thought to myself, I would love a tiny home someday. Not as a full-time live-in situation. It's a little much, but like to go and sort of have it as a getaway. Yeah, a getaway situation. I think that would be great. Because I can't afford some palatial getaway on a mountain. You know what I'm saying? So like a tiny house. Yeah, that's my speed. And I can go there and be alone and get away from weird society. Anyone want to join me? You know what? I'll put out a contest there where a lucky weirdo can spend a weekend with me in my tiny home, in the middle of nowhere, and we'll smoke weed and get poison ivy. It'll be a great time. All right, enough.